Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, dear guests. I welcome you to this first live stream event of Coface in Switzerland. I'm Kaspar Loeb, and I have the privilege to lead you through the next roughly 60 minutes of hopefully lively debate. The format may be different, but our goal is the same. We want to provide you with valuable insights about a topic that has a strong impact on your business and the potential to change the risk assessment that you have to do for your companies going forward. And as always, we have invited well-known and able experts to give you guidance and help you navigate through a time with many pitfalls. On November 5th, in 5 days from now, the whole world will focus on the election of the next president of the United States. It may change the course of history and the business environment globally, in the US, but also in Switzerland. We chose the title Trump Comeback or First Female President because the comeback of a former president or the election of the first female president is a milestone in the history of the United States. To understand the political and economic impact the election of Trump or Harris will have on all of us, we can rely on two renowned experts in the matter. Martin Naville is currently Senior Advisor of the Swiss American Chamber of Commerce. Until July 2024, he was CEO of the organization for 20 years. Before this, he spent 16 years with Boston Consulting Group in Munich, Zurich, and New York. Martin holds a Master of Law from the University of Zurich. Klaus Wellershoff is Chairman of the Board of Directors of Wellershoff & Partners and was previously for 12 years Chief Economist at Swiss Bank Corporation and then at UBS. He teaches economics at the University of St. Gallen and holds a number of foundation and board positions in science, culture, and sports. As always, you will have the opportunity to participate in our discussion. You can send your questions in the comment section of this event. Obviously, we will not be able to answer all of your questions, but we will make a follow-up after our live stream and give you feedback to the questions that we couldn't answer during our live session. And please note that no question will be answered directly in the chat. Enough of housekeeping. Now let's start the debate, and you know it's Halloween, so I hope it's a really lively and hot debate that we have. Welcome, Martin. Welcome, Klaus. I will start with you, Martin. Many describe the next election of the US president as historical, because either a candidate will be elected who has already been president or the first woman will be elected. Would you agree with the assessment that this is a historical election?
First of all, it's historical because it's really Halloween. There's no good solution. On the symbolic level, it is very historical. Either it's a rerun of a president, the second time in history of the United States of America, or the first time a woman, and the first time also an ethnically different type of woman. So yes, symbolically it's very different. But in terms of content of policies, I mean, basically we're talking either a Trump 2.0 rerun or a Obama 4.0, because it was Obama 1, Obama 2, Biden was Obama 3, and now we get Obama 4. And so I think it is more of the same. It's not going to change the world totally. We will discuss about the differences, but I think it's very unhistoric in terms of the content and also the effects afterwards.
Klaus, more of the same?
I am a little bit cautious with that assessment. It might be historical. So maybe in 6 months' time we will say it was historical, and I believe that there is a chance that this will take place if President Trump is re-elected in a way. And the reason for that is that he clearly has promised us that he will go against the Constitution of the United States of America, and we will see a severe test of these institutions that are safeguarding that Constitution in case that he is elected. And then there is a very symbolic, and here I agree with you, Martin, there's a very symbolic interpretation of the election in case if Trump gets elected for all those autocratic leaning populist governments and parties in the rest of the democracies on this planet. It would be highly symbolical, highly encouraging for people like Madame Macron, for example, if President Trump was elected.
Let's stick a little bit to Trump. During the campaign, the running mate for Vice President Tim Walz called Trump weird and was very successful with this description of Trump's erratic behaviors. Tell me, Martin, you know the United States very well. Why are so many Americans attracted to a candidate who lies all the time, who spreads conspiracy theories, and obviously has no respect for women or people who don't share his opinion? Why is that?
Because this is looking through the Swiss lenses and through the Swiss media, which is not totally bipartisan. I mean, they copy CNN, which is a democratic media.
But you would agree that he lies all the time?
Oh, he lies all the time. But he lies often with a good reason to promote the topic, etc. I would just remind ourselves that when Bush was elected, a very important Swiss media said 61 million Americans have lost their minds, which in terms of democracy seems to me a bit complicated, at least. And I think we have a bit of the same. I mean, we treat every Trump voter as a complete idiot, and half of Americans think he does a lot of things right. So I think we should, instead of always demonizing him, we should also think about what does he bring to the table that the Democrats have not brought to the table for 30 years. He's caring about workers, he's caring about a lot of people. With the Democrats, it's all Vogue, it's all topics that are really at home in universities on the two coasts.
But Martin, I think the only person that Trump cares about is himself.
That's again your Swiss lens. I'm sorry, of course.
Is that only a Swiss lens? Because when you look at the behavior.
May I just quickly? Why do probably there will be 160 million, 670 million voters? Why are 75 million, 70 million people thinking he's great?
I think it's a very similar phenomenon than we see in Western democracies in Europe. People are disgruntled with the democratic system that tends to produce compromise, which is the function of a democracy, but people don't like that all the time. And many of the compromises that have been created in recent years, also in this country, leave people disgruntled, and they start to vote for people who are anti-establishment. I think that's a much stronger motivation to vote.
So we should abolish democracy?
No, but you ask for the reason why, and it always might lead to an answer that you don't like, also you.
Martin, when we talked before this live stream, you said it doesn't matter who will be elected because the American business is so strong, the economy is so strong that it will not make a difference whether Trump or Kamala Harris will be president. Why do you think it doesn't matter who is president at the time?
So I think it's two layers. First of all, most of the very important decisions are done in Congress. The President of the United States has very little power relative, to what we think. And so the most important election for me is not the White House, will be Congress. The best guess is the Senate will turn from today Democrat to Republican. In the House, it's a little unclear, but probably there is a good chance that he turns Democrat, and then we'll have a frozen Congress, and then most of the things are not going to change. Through the Swiss lens, in the last 30 years, we had 18 years of Democrats and 12 years of Republican in all different fashions of who was in the House and the Senate. And it was always good for Swiss companies because it's not driven by policies that are done in Washington. It's driven by policies that are done, on the next layer in the individual states, and especially it is American companies which have been extremely successful in the last 20, 30 years. And the Swiss companies who have been there for 50, 60, 80, 100 years have been extremely successful. America is now the number one export market for Swiss companies. First time in history, it's the number one foreign direct investment inbound for Switzerland. So the success of the Swiss-American business relationship is really not based on policies in Washington. It's really based on the very, very strong competitive forces that are in American companies. And so I'm not worried that in 4 years this whole thing, after 30 years of success, will keel over.
Martin, again,
would you agree with that?
No. Again, you describe the most optimistic outcome, that we don't have a clear majority in the Congress for the Republicans. In the case of a Trump victory, a Republican Senate and a Republican House we would be in a very, very awkward situation where policy making would indeed be very much influenced by Trump because his followership in both parliaments has increased over recent years. It would not be comparable to his first term in office. And the big issue, I think, that I would see between the two is a matter of predictability. Right. President Trump is highly unpredictable in his policy recommendations. And anything could happen, including very bad things for example, Swiss pharmaceutical companies. So I would be much less relaxed.
Now wait 2 points before you go on.
Let me finish.
You just put up a lot of goals here.
I think the best case is the case where we have a split Congress. And the most predictable case would be a Harris win because we would know we get some left-wing policy following very traditional patterns. In that sense, I agree with your number. What's Obama number 4 that we would see. So there would be much more predictability, and in many instances, that's a much more comfortable environment for companies than the highly unpredictable and personal, unstable Donald Trump.
Okay, I have to backtrack a bit because first of all, what we know is the Republicans are not going to get 61 seats in the Senate. And with the filibuster rule, the Democrats could, even if they don't have either house in the Senate, they can block everything.
That's so.
Point 1.
Well, predictability.
I mean, 61.
Predictability, that's very important.
Yeah.
What do you say about predictability?
Coming. Yeah. Predictability, second, we have a candidate that 5 years ago said, prohibit fracking, eliminate ICE, the border control, defund the police, nationalize the healthcare industry. And she says everything the country now. So I'm not sure where you take predictability of what's going to come about when Kamala Harris is president.
But that, of course, is a nonsensical argument. I mean, every political candidate has positions that he or she presents during election campaigns that she will not be able to pull through completely. This is where the frustration of many of the voters that voted for Trump today comes from, actually. So that's a very normal thing to happen. What I mean with predictability is that you start off with something and 2 weeks later you do something else. And this is something that we have observed, I think, during Trump's presidency. Just think of foreign policy, flip-flopping all around.
In an analysis, the Coface economists have calculated that the deficit of the U.S. would grow about $3 trillion under Trump. That is 1.1% of GDP, or 1.5 trillion under President Harris, which is 0.5%. You see the slide over there. How dangerous is this immense US deficit for the world economy and for us all, Klaus?
I'm relaxed about deficits in general. What I worry more about is whether the United States has found the optimal size of government. I out myself, I'm a conservative liberal person in the European sense, not in the American sense. I like markets, I hate government. But in the United States, I think you could make a point that government expenditure is too small for the country. So what I mean by this is a simple look at the infrastructure that the Americans have. The transport infrastructure, think of the bridges that are collapsing, and awful. Very awful.
But we have big investments during Biden now in the last 2 years.
I think they could do more. And for that matter, I don't like, in particular, I wouldn't like to see the government share of GDP to shrink in the United States of America, because that at one point will hurt the ability to be a productive economy. Just think of education, schools. I mean, the list is endless. So in that matter, I would rather prefer to see a president that is not cutting taxes. Sounds strange for somebody who's outed himself as a conservative liberal person. But please remember that the share of government in the United States economy is much, much lower than in most democracies on this planet. And maybe there's a limit to what they can do.
Would you agree, Martin, that debt is not the problem, but when we look a little bit further on both of them, they're discussing tariffs a lot. Tariffs can hurt also Swiss economy, Swiss companies, Swiss export. That could be an issue with Trump and with Harris.
Yes. First, clearly there will be tariffs on both sides, because they're very protectionist. I think for Swiss companies the problem is a lot less, because let's forget, tariffs is only for goods that are imported in the US. For Swiss companies who produce in the US, there are no tariffs. We are the 6th largest foreign direct investor in the US, so for Swiss companies, it would be a relative advantage. So no disadvantage versus the American versus the American competitors, and a competitive advantage versus the foreign companies that want to import into the US. For companies that only do exports without any value add in America, that will become more complicated.
Yeah, and you argued that America is such a great country because it has increased so much in relevance for the Swiss economy, for exporters and producers. Now, the exporters would be hit. And from a Swiss economic perspective, I think there is a threat that comes from both of them. And again, here, I like threats that I can reasonably predict rather than those that might just, come into existence overnight because the man had a bad night's sleep.
Which Swiss industries would be mostly hit? We always discussed about pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah,
and you said now in the...
Very predictably with Kamala Harris, it will be massively threatened.
When we started discussing this, you said, in the moment it's not a problem because only very few drugs are under this protection. Don't you think that either Trump or Harris would just add many, many other drugs to the list and make it cheaper than today?
Look, this is again Congress. They cannot just add because that's in the Inflation Reduction Act, which is a law. If they want to change the law, they need a majority in the House and they need a qualified majority in the Senate. And so I don't think they can do like this and add massively on this. And if somebody would do this, I mean, Kamala Harris hates Switzerland because of pharma. I met her. She told me they're all bloodsuckers and criminals that, gouge the American people. I mean, she has a very emotional reason to really go after Swiss pharma companies. And so I would put this a bit more relative. Probably we will get, over time, we will get more because it is the most expensive pharma market in the world. So yes, we will get something. But for me, a Kamala Harris administration will go much faster, trying everything to go after pharma companies than a Trump administration.
Do you see other industries that also threatened probably by either Trump or Harris? Swiss?
It's probably the global effects that we should also be worried about. I'm less worried about taxes on direct exports to the United States of America, but an intensification of what people call trade wars. That could be very seriously, because a serious thing for our exporters. We're producing a lot of investment goods, and if countries that use these investment goods are severely hit by tariffs, that might be an issue. And it might be a very indirect issue. I'll give you one example. When President Trump, for the first time, approved tariffs on the Chinese, the reaction of the Chinese was to devalue their currency. So even those areas where there were no tariffs to be feared, Swiss competitors had a real issue because the currency was 15% lower after the tariffs were invoked. So the overall effect, I think, for the world economy is bad, and as a small open economy, Switzerland is exposed.
There is something that I find interesting. When you just look at the data in the US, growth is much better than in Europe. Inflation is coming down a little bit. The stock market is doing very well. But still, people perceive their situation, also their economic situation, as very bad. And when you look at the data and the perception, there is a big gap.
You say the Americans perceive.
Yes, absolutely.
But that's a global phenomenon. We have the same in Switzerland. We have unusually low consumer confidence. The same in Europe. It's a global phenomenon. My pet theory is that this is due to the fact that we ask different people today than we asked before. And you probably have heard about the discussion about optimism between generations. And the optimism in the younger generation has been severely hit over the recent years, in particular after COVID, but it started actually in 2010. So I think this is a generational issue. Younger people in general are less optimistic than they were before, and for that matter, we measure lower consumer confidence and lower optimism in the population overall.
I would just add one thing, is the American, as many others, do not understand the term inflation. Because when inflation comes down, it's only the increase in prices that gets less increase. So for the American consumer, he and she goes to the supermarket and the prices are 20% higher than 3 years ago. And as every president, as every non-incumbent says, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?
Exactly.
The consumer was better off 4 years ago. That's irrelevant. Is it Trump or is it whoever? It's just because of an inflation bout that went up to 8%.
And here's a good reason not to vote for Trump, because I think we can by now prove empirically with data that the main reason for the global pickup in inflation was U.S. fiscal policy during President Trump.
And would that be even more now when he would be the second time? Because what he said means that he would do things that maybe inflate inflation.
I wonder. I don't know whether the man learns or not. I don't dare to say so. But the circumstances are probably slightly different. So, and what really increased the effect was the COVID period that we had, and the global demand for goods in particular, which was the trigger then also later for service inflation, the problem we have now, just clearly came from the U.S. consumer, and that was clearly instigated by the fact that everybody received the beautiful checks that Mr. Biden continued to send, but he started with that.
Which Mr. Biden continued to send.
Yes, but then he started with that and continued. And if you look at the pickup of inflation, many people think it is related to the Ukrainian war. Not at all. The pickup inflation was much earlier. It started in the United States. It started with goods. It started immediately after President Trump started to redistribute money to everybody, indiscriminately of whether they were wealthy or had high income or not.
Martin, Kamala Harris is criticized because she didn't have or wouldn't have an economic program. So she tried to outline this, but it seems that people don't understand. But I'm sure you know exactly what is the Trump economic policy.
The same as he had the first 4 years. Which I mean, we could go into deep discussion. I dare have a bit of another view because, I mean,
that's okay.
Putting subsidies of $3.6 trillion, 3,600 billion, did also pretty good effect on the inflation, and that is all. This is all President Biden and now President Trump. So I think it's.
I didn't say anything about Mr. Biden, did I?
No,
I talked about Trump, and I'm not endorsing Biden either. I'm just pointing to a fact.
But in very short terms, Martin,
Yes.
very short terms, what is the Trump economical program? Very short terms.
Very short terms. Clearly, it's prolonging the tax cut, which is taking down the highest taxes in the OECD to the median of the OECD.
Which will be reinstated 2025, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
That's certainly number one. Number two is free, fair, and reciprocal. Free, fair, and reciprocal means if the Chinese have 2.5 times the tariffs of America, either the Chinese go down or the Americans goes up. Because you need free, fair, and reciprocal. And then under free, fair, and reciprocal, you have a lot of, you will have tariffs, you will have a lot of things, you will have certain subsidies in certain sectors just to make it free, fair, and reciprocal. Because if China uses the government subsidized surplus for geostrategic goals like the e-cars and the aluminum and all those kind of things, I think somebody has to do something against it. And that's his main goal is free, fair, and reciprocal. Competition, yes, but on a free, fair, and reciprocal basis.
Is that free, fair, and reciprocal, or is it trade war? What do you think?
Oh, it's nonsense, to be honest. I mean, it didn't help anybody. The only thing that it created is political tension. And even the Chinese, as they devalued their currency, as I said earlier, they didn't feel the tariffs much. In fact, in some cases, and in competition with other countries, they had improved their situation. I'm less worried about the things that we know of, actually with both candidates, than the things we don't know of in the economic or political
In both candidates?
In both candidates.
Oh, yeah.
So, no, I'm not endorsing anybody. I'm trying to be... No, you don't like it because you like Trump.
No, I don't know. No.
But it's interesting,
wait. Stop. I'm the only Swiss who on TV compared him with a body piece that we cannot name here. I think the guy is disgusting. So let me make it clear, I don't like Trump.
You like his policies.
I compare the two policies, and I would if you talk about uncertainty on one side, I talk about at least as large as an uncertainty on the other side. And so I'm very happy not to have to vote because it would make me very, very nervous to have to vote one or the other.
But the saying was always, it's the economy, stupid. During
talk about
Clinton.
A core thing that he announced. I didn't want to avoid your question. He will try to influence the institutional regulation around the Federal Reserve Bank of the United States of America. That is absolutely crazy. A more dependent central bank. And he wants to have a say in whether interest rates should go up or down. And that's insane. It will not happen.
Never going, and he doesn't want to do it. And then
he does want to do it. Oh, I tell you.
Oh, yes. Oh, no,
yes.
because
he has a stock portfolio.
But you know, he threatened it also in the time when he was already president. He went after the president of the central bank. So he was pushing. Probably he didn't do it.
He changed the central bank president, and he will do so again because Mr. Powell is too competent.
Yeah, but he wasn't bad, right?
No, he's good, but he will throw him out. He already said that. He announced that he will find something else.
Yeah, but every time he announces something you like, or you use that argument, it's a fact, and every time otherwise he lies. Now, I mean, for me, we've seen in his first campaign and his second campaign is everything he talks about in campaign is totally irrelevant.
So his tax cuts or the continuation of the tax cuts is irrelevant?
No.
Okay, but he talks about that.
Yes, also.
But that's interesting, Martin. That's something I wanted to ask you before already. You know, you said before, Kaspar, it's not important what he says. It's very important what he does. But still, I want to challenge you on only a few things that he said. He said, I will make a deal between Putin and the Ukraine within 24 hours. True or not true?
He said that about North Korea, right?
Yeah.
The fact is, everybody in the media says he's going to give everything to Putin because he's a friend of Putin. So the facts are Crimea 2014, Obama did nothing. 2017, Trump came in and put in the strongest, he or his administration put in the strongest sanctions against Russia ever. In those 4 years, they have massively sent weapons to the Ukraine. I've seen the list of the weapons that have been sent. He was very, very strong supporter of Ukraine in his 4 years, because otherwise, 12 months after the intronization of Biden, Ukraine would not have a chance. And third, he's deadly afraid of being Chamberlain of the 21st century. We had the head of the Armed Forces Committee of the House, and he's the highest Democrat, and they both said, we have 80% agreement. It's either we send unlimited weapons now, or we have to go in 5 years with NATO and Article 5.
Okay.
And so because of the empirical evidence of his first 4 years and the situation that he doesn't want to be the Chamberlain, he's going to continue to push. He's not going to make peace. But that's a nice sentence. I'm going to build the wall. I'm going to do this.
That's exactly what I mean. The nice sentence is that we never know whether that is true afterwards or not.
But with the other candidate, we also don't know. I mean, she said this, and now she said this. It's all campaign talk. It's pretty irrelevant.
What do you think about this whole drilling and energy return that he wants to go back to oil and all this gas and everything that pushes the prices down, what he says? Is that realistic in an economy that already changes from itself to new and sustainable energies?
Oh, cheaper energy will always be in demand. I wouldn't doubt that.
Yeah.
And here, because there is financial interest and incentives for him involved, I would also agree that there's a likelihood that something like that in that direction might happen.
Okay. Because I think it's a trade-off. I mean, you have between security. So America until 2015 was very dependent on foreign energy. They are net exporter of energy.
Right.
So this is in terms of security, of independence, of autarky. It's a very important thing. The other side is green. Now you cannot have both. You cannot be extremely green and at the same time be extremely autark. With the Democrats, we'll get more green. Less autarky with the Democrats, with the Republicans, and with Trump. But that's not just Trump. This is through the entire party. It will be more autarky. That means drill, baby, drill. And in terms of gas, we were very happy that America drilled a bit, because otherwise Europe would have been very cold a few years ago.
Right. What is interesting, both candidates have a very protectionist agenda to protect U.S. companies from global competition. We talked a little bit about this. How dangerous is this when we talk all about free trade, which is very important to everybody, but when you look at it, it seems that free trade is less and less. Would you agree that a protectionist agenda for the US would even boost this end of free trade war? Free trade, sorry.
Oh yeah, but that is a process which is much broader, and it started earlier than Trump. I mean, we shouldn't blame that on Trump.
Yeah.
And the process is, as I said, very broad. It includes the European Union. It includes all kinds of non-tariff trade barriers. So it's a very, very complicated thing. It's happening. It's hurting mainly the country that imposes the tariffs. So as a true friend of the Americans, I would hope they would both not go that way. But I think this is part of the American decline.
But, again, at the risk of sounding positive to Trump again.
You do, indeed.
Yes, because, I'm sorry if I have some facts. Under Trump, there was free trade with Canada, Mexico, South Korea, Japan, and several South American and African countries. We had a second chance to at least start exploring a free trade agreement between Switzerland and America, which didn't work, but not because of the American side. The Commerce Secretary of President Biden, Gina Raimondo, said free trade is last century's tools. We are not going to go there. So if I hope a bit more free trade, I'm rather with the Republican than with the Democrats.
But the interesting thing is, it doesn't seem when there are free trade agreements on the spot. Trump always looked that the free trade agreement will be a better deal for the United States. He did it with Mexico and others.
Hope so.
Yeah,
we also want to have a better deal.
Right. But the thing is, do you think that this free trade, the idea of free trade, is not only threatened, obviously, by the United States, but also by China and others? Between Europe and China is also a discussion. Doesn't that hurt in the long term our prosperity when we have these ongoing discussions between the big ones going on tariffs and trade war?
It does.
Yeah. So it hurts which industries most? Obviously, in Germany, it's the auto industry, the car manufacturers.
No, I think that's the too narrow view of things. I mean, we don't trade because we don't want free trade because we want to promote a certain industry. We like free trade, at least as economists, and since 1817, this book by David Ricardo on the matter, we like free trade because it allows us to specialize on those areas of economic activity where domestically we have the higher productivity. Yeah. That's the most misunderstood concept in economics. Everybody talks about competitiveness, and it's not about competitiveness in pharma U.S. versus pharma Switzerland. It's about the increase in productivity. It's the relative productivity between the sectors. Why does pharma work here? Because the productivity in pharma has been growing much faster than in all other industries. So it's of course, you get tariffs on cars, you will say, oh, it will hurt the car industry, but in fact, it will hurt everybody in every sector because we cannot specialize to the point that is optimal.
Okay. Kamala Harris vows to not raise the taxes until an income of US $400,000, but wants to raise the taxes for enterprises from 21 to 28%. So more or less going back to something that they had already. How much would that be an impact for the US companies, but maybe also when we talk about a broader picture, how much would that have an impact on the US economy?
Well, first of all, it's not going to happen because it's Congress, so it's easy to say. The second one, yes, it has an impact. I mean, clearly, she also wants to raise the social cost for companies. That goes directly from the salaries of the employees. So for me, that's really a fig leaf saying it's not going, taxes are not going to rise. Already today, 90% of taxes are paid by the 10% of the people who earn more. Now, what's, pay their fair share? What's their fair share? 100% of everything or what? I mean, and so I think that's going to be a very divided political discussion, and depending where Congress stands at this point, most probably it's not going to happen.
It's a left-right political issue because the overall tax burden in the United States of America is significantly lower than in most other industrialized economies on this planet. Even with if the new Vice President Harris was elected, the Americans would still pay much lower taxes as a population and a corporation. The question is, who pays these taxes? Right. And as long as Warren Buffett can say, I pay lower taxes than my secretary, the Americans have an issue, and they will fight about this left and right. And I'm not worried at all about Actually, isn't it? They don't prolong something which was meant to be temporary.
Right. This is the fiscal cliff.
Yes.
End of 25.
Yep.
The main pieces of the tax reform of the Trump.
The Tax Cuts and Job Act.
Exactly.
That was
That was a
introduced under Trump.
temporary thing, and it's very typical for politicians to offer temporary things which then remain there forever.
Right.
And I don't think you endorse that type of policy either.
Absolutely not. I mean, this was because they have to have a pay for. They implement something, and so instead of saying it's there forever, they say it's only there for 7 years. So it costs less, and so you can basically you can make a good case for it. But clearly, I mean, this is a risk because Parliament, Congress has to decide to prolong this. So it's not just if they could cut it; they have to decide to prolong it.
Yeah.
Now, depending on how Congress will stay, it will be constituted. It could be that people just say, I'm not going to do anything, and then it just goes.
It will be a major break
snap
of
back.
a promise that President Trump has given in his presidency to have only a temporary tax
Right,
reduction.
because it was introduced 2017.
Yep.
So obviously it has to be reaffirmed in 2025, so in 8 years. And that would mean a broken promise, right?
Yeah, I mean, except it's, especially if it's the other president. I mean, if Kamala Harris is president and she will not push for it.
She will keep his promise. It's a very strange world.
It's a very strange world indeed. But I mean, clearly, it's not the White House. This is going to be Congress. If Congress had to decide to cut it, I would be with you and say nothing's going to happen. The problem is they have to decide to prolong it.
Right.
And that could be difficult just for process matters. They're all going to play a chicken game again, and they're going to, until least midnight, etc. And so it really depends how the House and the Senate will be constituted to see if an accident will happen.
And that's what we talked about earlier. People are frustrated with these situations, and when they vote now for Trump, they will vote for somebody who's anti-establishment, and his fraction in Senate and House is getting bigger because he's promoting other people with no brain that are also anti-establishment.
And this
So
time he
garbage,
has
right? Yeah,
No.
I think
brain.
what is different is this time he has a program. When he was elected 2016, he was surprised.
Yep.
So he had no program. Now he has a program. You said this program is not very
Oh,
important,
you mean
but
the
still
program 2025? That's not his
2025.
program. This is a few, people who want to get into the media from the Heritage Foundation, which is a very, very right-wing entity that has. Why should that be Trump's program? It is not.
Because, it goes along the lines that when he discusses his economic program, it goes along the line of what they say.
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
I mean, we can't go into
Well,
details, but I would.
I mean, I think, in all fairness, I think he talks about some of the points and has similar positions.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's conservative, but at the end of the day, if you look at the 390 pages of recommendations, it says really very, except that they're both on the Republican conservative side. They have very little to do.
There's one thing that you can sure about: he hasn't read it.
No, that's true.
That's my point. I mean,
that's something he has with Reagan. Reagan only wanted on A4 paper so that he knew what he was. That's
and good
exactly the same
CEOs
thing.
also say, if you can't put it on one page, don't bring it to me.
Right, exactly. For the Swiss industry, people who are watching now are mostly people who work here in Switzerland, who have risk assessments as well. Would you say, Klaus, there is really a difference whether the president will be Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, or basically it will be more or less the same for all these people that are watching now and have to do their risk assessments according to who is elected?
Oh, I share the hope of Martin that we'll have a split Congress, and that's a very likely outcome. And as long as that is the case, I think there will be limits to the differences that the two candidates can have. Having said that, in trade in particular, the president has the prerogative. And if Harris was elected, I think you would have a reasonable idea what's going to happen in the next 12 months or so because of the legislative process that usually takes place. In the case of Trump, you will have to look at the news every morning, see whether you get new tariffs or not.
Would you agree, Martin?
No. Well, that's a long discussion. Yeah, because the process is the same for both.
Yeah.
I think the biggest uncertainty is who is going to be on the cabinet of Kamala Harris. Right. Kamala Harris was in the Senate one of the most left-oriented politicians. Just by her voting behavior. She was more leftist or more whatever you want to call it than Bernie Sanders. That's pretty far out left.
That is.
And then the big question is, if she becomes president, does she attract professionals into the cabinet, or does she get pushed by the progressives, which is the leftiest wing of the Democratic Party, to fill the cabinet with all the Ocasio-Cortez, Elizabeth Warren, who all want to completely change America in their progressive way. And so I think that the uncertainty is at least as large as the other side. We'll see what happens, but again, I'm very hopeful that Congress will be paralyzed for at least 2 years, and then nothing big is going to happen.
But here's a forecast. Yeah. My only forecast so far this evening is that whoever is on the cabinet of Kamala Harris will stay longer in their position than those people that are with Mr. Trump now.
I am not sure. I have a very good friend who worked for her in her totally missed campaign. Right. 5 years ago, I know somebody who worked for her in the West Wing, in the East Wing, and both of them disgustedly left after 3 months. And if you look at the rollover, she is a very good competition to Donald Trump.
But Donald Trump, we have a track record now.
Yeah, but we also have a track record with
not in government.
What makes you so sure that first, that he will choose professionals and not only people who just say, yes, I do whatever you want, so loyalists, and why are you so sure that this is a kind of stable government? Because as we said, the last government under Trump was highly unstable.
I said neither. What you just said. So first of all, what do we know about who is going to get into his cabinet? So you read CNN, it's all going to be MAGA idiots in the cabinet. I talked to a few people, and they all tell me it's going to be pretty simple. He wants professionals for those things that are critical.
And for the rest, he wants loyalists.
So he will be Treasury, Defense, the State Department, Commerce. That will be professionals. On the most populist thing, immigration, transport, communication, and those kind of things, there he will have loyalists.
Okay.
So for us, it would be good because then you have professionals on those topics that are really important to us in Switzerland. Certainty, none, but
yes.
A probability. On the other side, I have absolutely no clue. Zero. And so, you talk about uncertainty. I mean, we're always uncertain on both sides, but I mean, on her side, I'm a lot more worried.
I think we know that she will be a leftist president.
Yeah.
I think we know that, regardless of who chooses
so
for
be
cabinet
a social
posts.
democrat.
It will be probably a left social democrat government.
Yep.
But then with a split house, she can't do much. So I'm not that worried about that situation.
Oh, she could, with executive order, she could implement price control in the supermarkets that are all gouging criminally.
If push comes to shove, we'll have the same with Trump. And we know that this might come with her. We don't know it will come with him. That's the uncertainty difference. And it could happen in any policy field that Mr. Trump gets crazy ideas.
You just don't like him, right?
No, to be honest, indeed, I would not spend my vacation with him,
neither would I.
So there you go.
There is something new in this election.
Position on Trump.
For the first time, you see a billionaire dancing in the rally of Donald Trump, so Elon Musk,
he attracts
who says more or less, if he's not elected, democracy will go down the toilet. What does it mean when a billionaire like Elon Musk, with interest behind it, directly influences the campaign, not only by giving money, which is normal, but also making a kind of appearance in these rallies that we have seen?
Oh, that's a question for me. I didn't pay much attention to that, to be honest. Right. I think it's worrying that Elon Musk, as the head of an owner of X social media, the channel which was previously called Twitter, is endorsing so clearly, not only endorsing, he's campaigning for the guy. And I would find that very disturbing if somebody from a normal media house would do the same, stand on a stage with Kamala Harris, and you would all say, well, that's very strange. So that's something I find strange. But the fact that he's a billionaire doesn't faze me much, because the whole American election system needs a lot of money, and the Democrats have probably more, I think, if I'm correctly.
No, they are 2.5 times what the Republicans have.
Than the Republicans. The only difference is that I think the average size of donation to the Democratic campaign is much, much smaller.
Right.
So the influence of individuals on campaign position, nominations, etc.
I would massively contest this.
It's smaller than in the case of Mr.
I mean, there
Trump.
is a whole series of billionaires who are behind the Democrats.
Okay,
I
that's
mean, the
also
PACs. I mean, so,
Yep.
in terms of influence, I mean, if we say we want transparency, at least, the guy gets out on the stage.
Yeah.
There's a lot of billionaires on the other side that do not go on stage.
But he has X behind, which is something where you can directly influence people, which is different as if you would be somebody who is a car manufacturer. That is not exactly the same, isn't it?
The difference is the media house.
It's different, but I mean, there's a lot of media people, a lot of entertainment people, a lot of media people who are in PACs behind the Democrats. So, the difference, I wouldn't really, say it's black and white. I mean, I think it's pretty equal in terms of influence, etc. It's just, I mean, I'm a bit challenged because I think our little Tesla boss is a very weird character.
Yeah, weird is again. Okay, we come back to
unhinged, but brilliant.
Yeah. So I have obviously the last question. Coface has made a very nice slide where we see that it is too close to call. So we don't know really who will be president. We have searches that say it's clearly Trump, others say it's clearly Kamala Harris, others say it's a neck-to-neck race. This is what we see at Coface now. To end our discussion, the million-dollar question. Who will be, in 5 days from now, announced as the new president of the United States? We begin with you, Martin.
Great. So first of all, it will not be announced in 5 days because it will at least take 6 or 7 days. 2, it's not about the popular vote. I mean, in Switzerland, we understand the Ständemehr and, the federalistic system. Small states get a little more. And so it's really about 6 or 7 states. That's probably those. I haven't seen the slide before. But we are talking about 6 states. In my view, in my analysis, it's Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. In 2016, a total of 310,000 votes went to Donald Trump. So Donald Trump won. 4 years later, Biden got in those 6 states 300,000 more votes and won.
Right.
So we're talking about less than 500,000 votes. Also this time in 165 million people who go to vote.
Yes.
And so in every state, I mean, we are talking a few 10,000 votes, and anything can happen.
Yes.
Currently, when you look at the polls, which are pretty unreliable anyway, when you go to the state level, there is a small advantage for Trump and a second small advantage for Trump because normally in the polls he's always underrated because, I don't know why, but probably a few people don't want to say to somebody they don't know that they will vote for Trump. And also some people in the Trump thing really don't like the media who do the polls. And so for those two little things, I think
short, Trump.
It's probably Trump, but it's a 52-48 forecast. Huh?
I would say one of the two.
Very good. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, now I have the privilege to take your questions, which I have here on my iPad. And I have a question for Klaus. Will Harris have the credibility to run the U.S. economic policies?
Why shouldn't she? I mean, if a former B-class movie actor can be an excellent president of the United States, then even Kamala Harris could, I think.
Except the B-class movie was Reagan, and he was the governor of the 6th largest economy in the world for 8 years. That's maybe a little more experience than Kamala Harris brings to the table.
Okay. And an interesting question. Can Donald Trump really be considered as a Republican?
No.
Because when you compare it to people, for example, like George W. Bush, then he is totally different. And for a very long time before, he was even a Democrat. So is Donald Trump a Republican or is he the leader of a cult?
Well, cult is a very big name.
Right.
He has transformed
Yep.
the Republican Party. It's not like in Switzerland or in Germany where you have 7, 8 parties to choose from. There you have one party or the other, period. Mm-hmm. And so he has clearly the people, the 50 plus or minus of the people who vote for him, most were Republicans before. So it is still the same party, but very clearly it's not the party, especially of the old Bush, H.W. Bush, or of Robert Portman or Donald Reagan. It's a very different party. But also the Democrats have changed massively in the last 30 years. 30 years ago, it was the blue-collar party, and now it's the woke party. They went from the middle of America to the coast. So I think both parties are morphing a lot because the fight is within the parties about the direction. And clearly Donald Trump has moved the party to something we as liberals, I mean, European types liberals don't really like. But that's what one of the most direct democracies in the world after Switzerland has done, and that's what we have to accept. This is a democratic decision.
Klaus, if tariff raises, would Swiss companies open more businesses in the US?
That's a question for Martin, I think.
Okay.
I would love to do. I mean, they already have done this for a very long time. One is because you want to have a natural hedge on the currency. Swiss francs get more expensive, so you want to have costs in America. Second, we have had certain protectionist measures under Obama, under everybody else, Buy America Act, etc. Three, it's cheap energy. It's very close to very competitive other companies. So the Swiss companies in the last 15 years, the amount of money directly invested in the US, so it's not shares, it's really factories, has doubled. Swiss companies in America. That's going to continue now. There is some more arguments because of tariffs to even more increase your value add in America.
Okay, what some people ask here is the opportunities for Swiss companies in the United States. Would there be more opportunities for Swiss companies in the United States under Harris or under Trump?
I don't see much of a difference, actually. No.
But
America is a great economy. It's a super great market. It has the ability to allow structural change more quickly than anywhere else. I think it's an attractive place to be.
And also relative, where else would you like to do a serious investment? In Germany, in France, in England, in Italy, in China, in Russia, and Brazil. I mean, basically, TINA, there is no alternative. It's the US.
Now, what the question is here is the tariffs. The question is, can Trump raise tariffs up to 100%, for example, on Chinese vehicles, knowing that China owns a part of the US state? That is what we discussed in the beginning. Is that possible that he says, okay, I will put 100% tariffs on Chinese goods, even though you know that there's a lot of the deficit is also paid by Chinese investors?
I wouldn't expect any sophistication to that level in the thought process of President Trump.
No?
No.
Okay. What do you think?
I mean, Biden has implemented 100% tariffs on Chinese cars. Nothing happened. And I think for Chinese is also which market, where do you go to? I mean, if you want a liquid investment, do you want to invest in, where do you want to invest? In the 65% of all the shares are in the US. 60% of all the central bank holdings are in dollar. If you have a lot of money like the Chinese have, and you want to invest it in a secure, transparent, liquid market, again, there's no real alternative for the Chinese. So the Chinese would shoot themselves very much into the foot if they stopped doing this.
We had quite a big impact on the Swiss financial services market, that you know very well, under the Obama administration, for example. So we had a big fuss with them. Do you think that this is now over, or we could see again that the Swiss financial services industry comes under pressure, for example, when Kamala Harris would be president of the United States?
Why would that be, really?
Because, they had always the discussion that Swiss are doing business in the United States, which may be against some of the like.
But we're quite reciprocal. The only guys who haven't instituted the automatic information exchange are the Americans. I think this story is over.
Even that story was never an attack on Switzerland. It was an attack of Obama against the banks. The Obama administration has fined banks in America to the tune of about $350 billion. Swiss Bank altogether paid about 4.7% of those fines. Bank of America all alone has paid 4 times more than all the Swiss banks together. So it wasn't really an attack on Switzerland. It was an attack on the banking system by a democratic administration.
Okay, So I don't see any further questions here. So I thank you, Martin, you, Klaus, very, very much for this interesting discussion. I hope it was as lively as we hoped for. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, I say very much thank you that you have been our guests. I hope you enjoyed this Halloween discussion, and we try to answer the questions that you haven't put out today in the discussion. We try to put them back to you in a further details. Thank you very much. I wish you a wonderful evening and hope to see you soon again in a live stream with Coface. Goodbye.